Dragi prieteni, sunteți din nou la Radio Shalom, emisiunea Universul la Feminin, în cadrul căreia noi de la o vreme avem o rubrică foarte interesantă, personalități evreiești în lume. Și iată că astăzi avem plăcerea să vorbim cu domnul Doctor David Silverstein, care este născut și a studiat și a stat până la 30 de ani în Statele Unite și acum de mulți ani este în Kenya, la Nairobi, unde este liderul spiritual al comunității evreiești de acolo. O să fie din nou un interviu în stilul pe care cred că deja l-ați îmbrățișat și l-agreați, adică voi pune întrebările în limba engleză, domnia sa va răspunde în engleză și după aceea vom traduce sensul a ceea ce se spune. Dear Dr. Silverstein, thank you very much for accepting this interview at Radio Shalom Romania. We are very proud to have you here as guest. So, I would like to enter directly into our discussion, not to take too much from your time, because we know how busy you are in this pandemic period with what is happening around us. Summarizing your career, you are an internist, a cardiologist trained in the United States, where you was born and you stay until the age 30 when you come in Kenya. And here in Kenya, there in Kenya, because we are here in Bucharest, you set the first cardiac catheterization laboratory. So I would like to start our discussion with asking, could you please share with us about the family, something about the first lessons you learned back in the States when you was a child, about Judaism, and what you want to tell us about this first part of your life, and then we'll discuss about how was your arrival in Kenya. I'm in your hands, you can speak freely. I don't want to interrupt.
Thank you very much. Well, I was born in Chicago, Illinois. My parents were both immigrants from Europe. My mother was from Lithuania and my father was from Poland. One came at 8 years of age, one came at around 12 years of age, and both came to stay alive under difficult times. And they both had a strong, my father, I'll call him first, he was my role. He came in and he had to learn the language, which was a challenge, but he picked it up very quickly because he was still young. He managed to then, after finishing with the equivalent of high school, he went into study at a yeshiva in Chicago, and he became the Chicago yeshiva, which is now well known. He was the first group of graduating. There were 3 rabbis that people that graduated. Then he decided that that's not what he wanted to be after he got his smicha, and he went through a period where he was less religious than he had been raised at an Orthodox yeshiva. And then he eventually met my mother, and before that he went to university, and then he became a doctor. And then he met my mother. Now we'll jump to my mother. My mother.
Only one little
Surely.
second to quickly translate only the summary, because after that we will have the subtitles. Dr. Silverstein spune despre familie. Părinții au venit foarte devreme în Statele Unite, la 8 și 12 ani, din Lituania, respectiv din Polonia. Tatăl l-a învățat foarte repede, a studiat la o școală de rabini, a fost la yeshiva și la un moment dat, sigur, a trăit într-o comunitate ortodoxă și apoi a cunoscut-o pe mama lui. Now about the mother.
My mother came from Lithuania. Her father was a rabbi a graduate of the Telza Yeshiva, which was a famous yeshiva in Poland. And he then went, my grandfather came to America originally to raise funds for the yeshiva. And he was offered a pulpit. And then he brought the whole family over. And my mother came over when she was 9 years of age. And she also was, of course, grew up in a religious family. She went to the college, finished regular school, went to the College of Jewish Studies and got a bachelor's degree in Hebrew studies. So both of my parents could speak Hebrew very fluently. Then I come into the story. My father and my mother meet each other. They end up getting married. My father is brought back to religion, being more religious, although not extreme. My mother continues on. Both of them are interested in Jewish studies, and they have 3 children, and I'm the middle one among them. And I'm born during the war. My father was away. He was in the army, but on a naval ship during World War II. And then he came back when I was already 1.5 years of age. And I grew up in my grandfather's house for a while. And then we settled in Chicago. My parents emphasized Jewish studies. My father was also very proud of the American system, that he was an American now. So he didn't send me to a day school where you just learn Hebrew and English together. I would first go to the public school, learn English, etc. And then from there, I would go to a Jewish day, go to Jewish studies. So my morning, I finished 3 o'clock. At 4:30, I had to be in school, and I studied there. And my parents would never tell me what's more important between the Hebrew or English studies until I was already in university. And they said, now focus more on your English studies. So it was something, we were all fluent Hebrew speakers in our family.
Yes, my aim is to allow our audience, the majority are speaking English, to listen your beautiful speech. So I don't want to interrupt you. Only a few words about what you just told. A spus în continuare despre mama lui care a venit de vreme pe la 8-9 ani împreună cu familia ei. Bunicul a fost rabin. A fost implicat și în colectare de fonduri pentru o yeshiva. Au venit toată familia, era o familie religioasă. Tatăl, când a cunoscut-o pe mama, a devenit din nou și el mai religios. A crescut într-o familie de 3 frați, este cel din mijloc între ei și n-a știut până în universitate ce să învețe mai repede, engleză sau ebraică, și a mers la școala obișnuită, școala publică, după care urma cursurile în ebraică și apoi universitatea. Many thanks. I quickly translate. Yes, please continue.
Well, then I was born. I had this education. I then went to the University of Chicago for medical school. I did my internship and part of my residency when I was drafted during the Vietnam campaign, the Vietnam War. As a doctor, I was a captain, then a major, like most doctors became. And actually, I was in Southeast Asia, but stationed in Taiwan. And that was a critical period of my life when I saw I was the youngest in my class. I was always in academics, and this was my opportunity to see the world rather than just studying going summer school, etc. And I realized there was a whole world out there, and I decided whenever I finish my full training, I'm going to go back and see part of the world.
Very, very interesting. Allow me quickly translate because I want to jump to a questions I have in my mind. Deci spune că a învățat, iată, în Chicago, școala medicală de acolo, apoi a fost și în războiul din Vietnam și și-a dat seama că își dorește foarte mult să călătorească și să cunoască lumea. A fost și în Taiwan. I saw on your CV a lot of languages. You know, yes, the internet is not so stable. I hope we can manage. Yes.
Right.
I saw English, Hebrew, German, Swahili, Mandarin, Chinese, and Gujarati. I never hear. Don't tell to somebody.
That's
a lot of languages. Știe foarte multe limbi, dintre care unele nici nu le-am auzit.
Well, the English, obviously, we grew up with. Hebrew, you understand now. Also, we even go to camp in the summer, Hebrew camps, when we were from the age of 9, 10, where we only were allowed to speak Hebrew in the camps in the United States. Now, then, of course, my parents and my grandparents spoke Yiddish. So to me, German was an easy language to learn. I had to take it in school. So that was very easy. And I still speak to my German patients who come as tourists. I sort of phase into talking, and I'm really speaking Yiddish, but they think it's Plattdeutsch, and they understand enough of it so we could understand each other. Then after that, of course, when I was in the Air Force, I was stationed in Taiwan, where the language is Mandarin Chinese. So I got picked up credits in studying Mandarin Chinese, and I became quite fluent in Mandarin Chinese at the time. And then, of course, when I moved to Kenya, I spoke Swahili, and a lot of my patients I had to speak Swahili to my African patients. Now they all speak English also as education improved. And and then for my patients who were from Asians, most of them were from an area of India called Gujarat, and I learned medical Gujarati so I communicate with them. But I must say, learning new languages gets more challenging. My Swahili and English are still very fluent, and as is but I lost my Mandarin when I learned my Swahili.
I understand. Now this is a very interesting piece of translation. Limba engleză, allow me to translate. How could you know so many languages and so different? Limba engleză rămâne limba maternă. În ebraică am învățat-o la 90 ani, când în taberele de vară trebuia să se vorbească în limba ebraică. Pe urmă, în familie, părinții și bunicii vorbeau Yiddish, prin urmare am învățat și Yiddish și de aici n-a fost greu să învețe germana. În continuare vorbește cu pacienții care vin în Kenya din Germania, vorbește în limba germană. Apoi a fost în Taiwan în timpul războiului și acolo a învățat destul de bine și fluent limba mandarină și chineză, după care limba Shakespeare o vorbește cu pacienții de aici din Kenya și o parte din Asia este pentru Gurati, o limbă din o anume zonă a Asiei. Many thanks. I think you could speak, you are very interesting in any word you share with us. Really, really. Now, I would like to go, if you want to tell something else about the state period, or we could move to the arrival in Kenya.
I think we could move to the arrival in Kenya.
Ne mutăm la sosirea în Kenya acum. Okay.
Now, the question is, how did I decide to come to Kenya?
Yes.
I really was open to any country, and but I had learned the technique, which was new at the time. Don't forget, this is 1974, of heart catheterization, and it was relatively new. It had only been going on for a few years. But I decided that I was going to follow my plan of going out in the world and seeing the world after my exposure. First, but I found out that I had a problem. I couldn't be just a hippie with a backpack, because I was also a workaholic. So then I had to find what was going to work for me. So I applied to various places, including a new university that was just being started, which is now a famous university, Ben Gurion University in the Negev in Israel. And I applied to the Fiji Islands, where they wanted me to be in charge of the dean of the medical school, dental school, mosquito school, and nursing school, which was way beyond what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a doctor treating patients. So the long and the short, I also applied to Kenya. And to be honest with you, I only knew it was in Africa at the time, but I knew somebody who was there. I didn't know if it was East or West Africa. Israel, I went to. They offered me an interesting job, but I came during a Khamsin. It was so hot, I said I could never survive the Negev of Israel. So I landed up going to Kenya, which is at an altitude of 2,800 meters or 500 meters, 5,500 feet is the way I know it. And at where the weather was compatible with my idiosyncrasies. And I offered the job to be a lecturer at the university, and then I progressed to go up the scale.
Să nu uităm faptul că i-a plăcut întotdeauna să călătorească, i-au plăcut provocările și să nu uităm că era vorba de anii 1974, când această nouă știință care se deschidea cateterilor, să spunem, se năștea și se începea să apară. A studiat și în Israel, în deșertul Negev, la universitate. Da, trebuie să spunem că atunci când a ajuns în Kenya, unde a văzut înălțimi de 2700-2800 de metri, nu i s-a părut o foarte mare diferență față de ceea ce văzuse și în Negev din punct de vedere al atmosferei. Oricum, detaliile le vom traduce în subtitrările care urmează. Ok. What was the first impact when you arrived in Kenya? So it was.
Well, of course, I was brought to picked up by the professor of medicine who brought me to the hotel. And I kept on saying, let me see this cardiac cath lab that you say is running that I'll be taking over, only to find out that it didn't exist. But by hook and by crook, I got it going within 4 months, which everybody said would be impossible. But I learned how to work the system. And if you get things working the right way in Africa, it can be faster than anywhere else in the world. But normally it's at a very slow speed. Also, my first weekend, the first thing I did is find out where the synagogue was, and I went to the synagogue, and I was warmly welcomed there. And everybody invited to me their house, and from that time on, I started being in charge of the services at the synagogue, and I was put on the council. And I've been a very active member since that time, including being the Rosh Kehillah 3 times, of which the 3rd time is still going.
Yes, I saw, and I'm very proud you are here with us. Deci, imediat după sosire a fost întâmpinat, l-au dus la hotel, a reușit să învețe în 4 luni tot sistemul în care urma să lucreze. Primul weekend s-a dus, bineînțeles, la sinagogă, unde a făcut parte din serviciul religios, pe urmă a condus serviciul religios și a fost de 3 ori ales ca președinte al comunității de acolo, lider spiritual al comunității evreiești de acolo. Și a 3-a oară este în curs, așa încât, în caz că poate n-a fost clar până acum, vorbim cu președintele comunității evreiești din Kenya. Now, I would like, do you want to tell something else? Or
yes, I thought I'll get you more up to date. At that time, after that, I decided I became a lecturer and then a senior lecturer. And then I switched to the government side and the chief cardiothoracic physician. Our cath lab became the first one in Black Africa. So we were getting quite a bit of publicity and publishing papers, and was good. And then after being there for a period of 6 years, I realized that as a white person at the time, non-citizen, I reached the pinnacle I was going to go, but I wasn't quite ready to leave, because at that time I was getting interested in flying. I got my pilot's license. And also about that, so I went into private practice. No, just before that, I was also asked to be the personal physician to the president of Kenya. That was already in 1983. So I moved to the private sector actually in 1981, and I started working in the private sector, which everybody knew me already because we had the only cardiac cath lab, so I was already doing cases. And then since then, I've been in the private practice in Kenya, and I became the president's personal physician in 1983 until he retired in 2001. So with him, it was not a full-time job. It was just I would travel with him whenever he went overseas. So it became a very new, increasing, exciting dimension in my life of traveling the world in the Kenyan delegation. I was the only Caucasian, and certainly the only Jew, but only Caucasian. But it was a very interesting time, and I developed the close relationship with the President Moi, who was the president, because he was very interested. He was a very religious man, interested in Judaism as a Christian, a fundamentalist Christian, and so we shared a lot discussing about religion, and also he got very interested in Israel, and there were many opportunities that we had. I brought him to Israel for medical reasons, and he went to Israel on his own for political reasons, international politics. So we've developed a very close relationship over the years.
Pentru cine înțelege, eu am lăsat special să curgă interviul ca să nu întrerup tot timpul. Este vorba de o viață extrem de interesantă. În 1981, bine, a fost deschizătorul acestei noi școli, singurul care nu era de culoare și era și deschizător, deci clientela a venit, n-a întârziat să fie o persoană extrem de importantă în întreaga zonă. Și a fost numit și medicul personal al președintelui Keniei. În 1981 a călătorit foarte mult în delegații oficiale, a fost în Israel cu președintele și pe motive de sănătate, dar și în vizită, înțeleg că a fost politică, iar dezbaterile pe care le aveau erau pe teme religioase, președintele fiind o persoană creștină, iar dezbaterile religioase erau animate și interesante. Sigur că o să traducem și detaliile, pentru că într-adevăr este foarte interesant. Da, very, very interesting life. I think you are not bored because you cannot be bored.
No.
Nu poate fi plictisit. Yes, I can understand.
To be bored.
I told that I keep the interview rather free because I want to for my audience, and if you want the success of this talk, it's the freedom and the openness. So it's normal to keep. I would like now to move a little bit to the Jewish community there, because you are the spiritual leader of this community. How many families? What about the Jewish community and the continuation of the Judaism there?
Yeah, the Jewish community in Kenya, Nairobi, goes back to, interestingly, to around, the first Jew came in 1899, and actually his name was Marcus, And he was a Romanian Jew, came from India, interestingly enough, in terms of your listeners. And he started doing business there, importing, exporting, selling things that were needed.
This is something I have to quickly tell to our
right.
Ok. Se pare că acolo comunitatea evreiească a început cu un român care a plecat în India, de acolo s-a mutat în Kenya, îl chema Marcus și asta se întâmpla pe la 1899. Da.
Then you had two Austrian Jews, one of them whose name was Marcus also, I think might have been spelled differently, who were good friends. They had been in England for a while and they decided to come to Kenya. That was a little after the turn of the century, 1901, I believe. The other one was 1899. And they became very successful. But they settled in Mombasa. They went back, and one of them married the sister of the other one. So it brought her there. And he was quite a character. They would go out to hunting elephants in the Congo. So brought for sale brought to Mombasa for sale onwards to Europe for the ivory. So you had all sorts of characters of various backgrounds. In 1903, the World Zionist Congress had a meeting where it was brought up by Theodor Herzl, what was called the Uganda Plan. It was suggested by
One second. În 1901 au venit încă doi austrieci evrei, unul dintre ei se numea chiar Marcus, cu totul întâmplător, ca și cel pe care vi l-am spus înainte. Au început și ei să fie foarte prosperi. Unul s-a căsătorit cu sora, cu două surori, deci unul a luat o soră și celălalt o soră. Și pe urmă a avut loc în 1903 Congresul Mondial Evrei s-a reunit și s-a discutat planul, the Uganda Plan.
It was called the Uganda Plan.
Da, planul Uganda. Da.
Right. At that time, it was British East Africa, and an area of northern Kenya was actually considered to be part of Uganda also, because there was no necessity for borders. And they voted for exploring it, thinking that if they could set up Israel, avoiding the problems, Chamberlain, who was the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Uganda, wanted to figure out a way of how to avoid all the interaction with the Arabs. And this was a plan that they would settle them in northern Kenya. And with that, they send out several people from Europe to investigate it. Now, the whites in Kenya who were controlling it, it was a British colony, weren't happy, even though they had some successful Jews among them. They weren't happy about all these European Jews coming in or Jews from elsewhere coming. So what they did when they visited the place, they made all sorts of lion noises during the night and scared the poor Jews completely out of their wits. And they came back saying, this is not a safe place. Their animals, they got petrified. However, there were some people from the time 1903, I think it was 1903 or 4 until 1907, when the idea was given up, you had some people coming to Kenya to look at the possibilities. And a lot of Jews came, not a lot, but a significant number came from South Africa to Kenya, thinking, let's be on the bottom line of this new Jewish state. And some became very successful hoteliers and farmers and the like. You also had an immigration of Jews from Eastern Europe as problems got more difficult and more difficult coming in, either going first to South Africa and then coming to Kenya. So Kenya became a place, the number of Jews were small. And when they decided to form a Jewish community in 1907, they were 30 Jews and they were meeting in different people's houses. They raised enough money to build a synagogue, which was completed in 1907 over a plot of land where the current synagogue stands. And the number of Jews were always small. The highest number we had was, I think at one time they got up to 150 or 180 families. Where did all these Jews come from? Well, the numbers were relatively small. Those who came were quite successful in farming, hotel. Then you had your lawyers and your doctors who came. Then as World War II became closer, and some even served in the army during World War I, as World War II became closer and closer, we had a big immigration of immigrants trying to get away from the Holocaust or the pogroms before the Holocaust. And the synagogue did take them in. At that time, we had a social was going to be a social hall that was built, and in that social hall, the first thing that was done, project that was done, is bringing the Europeans there, the European Jews, teaching them English and teaching them a little about farming so they could take up jobs as farm managers and the like. And that's a big immigration then.
Very interesting. Este foarte interesant pentru că ne trece prin istoria devenirii statului și istoria în care și evreii, nu foarte mulți, n-au fost niciodată foarte mulți, au venit și au întemeiat acolo o comunitate. Deci în perioada 1903 sau 4 până în 1907 au venit mai multe valuri, au fost acest plan Uganda, pentru că inițial partea de nord a Keniei făcea parte din ceea ce se numea Africa de Est. O parte din evrei au venit din Europa, altă parte de evrei au venit din Africa de Sud. Interesant este că n-au fost multe familii, dar se pare că la 1907 au fost vreo 30 de oameni acolo care au înființat și au și construit prima sinagogă. Nu au fost foarte bogați, foarte mulți bogați, dar care cum veneau, sigur că se așezau acolo. În afară de fermieri, au fost și avocați și medici. Pe urmă a venit primul război mondial, când o parte din ei au fost și-au luptat. Apoi au fost pogromuri, și-au venit alți evrei după pogrom și după Holocaust, de asemenea, au mai venit evrei. Niciodată comunitatea evreiească de acolo n-a depășit 130-150 de membri. Now I hope I try to keep the inner, if you want, of what you are telling about. Yes. Do you want to tell something else about what is daily, how it's happening weekly, how it's the Shabbat or something like this?
So just a little bit more about the Jewish community. It peaked out in around 1952 in its numbers. By that time, we had a branch in Nakuru, which was halfway, which was where a lot of the farm country and a lot of the Jews were farm managers or own farms. We had one in Mombasa, another synagogue there, each one having its own Jewish cemetery, which we keep up. And then our numbers started going down. In around 1952, we rebuilt our synagogue using the same plaque, the cornerstone as we had for the initial synagogue. And we built our second synagogue in the same place. And our numbers now, from that time on, just to say that our numbers wax and wane according. After independence, a lot of people got frightened in the idea of being in an African country led by Africans. So you had an emigration to Israel, back to Europe, to all over the world. And then some stayed on. But then the new immigrants that came in were Israelis looking for business opportunity. So now our community is probably around 85% Israeli. maybe 10% of the original Jews, there's almost nobody left among their children, a handful of their children and grandchildren, less than 5%. And the others are people who started like me as expatriate Jews. Now I'm a citizen of Kenya, but and stayed on, or Jews who come and go and they disappear every 3 years. So you're always in a change. When the economy improves, the number of Jews increases. When the economy goes down, we have a big emigration, but our numbers are quite small. The real miracle is how do we stay and survive for now 112, almost 110 years or longer under these adverse circumstances. And really, it was due to the attempts of individuals to try to keep Judaism going, even though the congregants were changing in backgrounds. We all have tried to keep it going. Now, in terms of what we have our, maybe I'll stop here in case you want to finish that to your listeners before I move to what we do now in our services.
Da, înainte să spună cum se întâmplă în mod cotidian, să spunem, serviciul religios, ne spune că a fost o fluctuație destul de mare. Când economia crește, evreii sigur au venit să caute oportunități de afacere. Când scade, iarăși ei pleacă. După războiul pe care l-au avut acolo, mulți au plecat înapoi în Europa, alții în Israel înapoi. În acest moment, cam 85% sunt, și în general a fost asta, cei care vin din Israel, restul fiind fie patrioți care acolo au rămas pentru că le-au fost rădăcinile, fie care sunt în trecere, vin și pleacă. Deci nu sunt stabili de acolo. Yes.
Okay. I think what we do on our services, we have a Shabbat service. We struggle in the last 5 years or 10 years getting a minyan every Shabbat. And of course, it's been impossible during COVID, but we somehow keep going. A lot of people are more interested in the social things that we have. We try to keep social things. We haven't had a rabbi for quite some time, but a new rabbi has just been hired and came last week. So we're hoping that he will get more and more people interested. In the synagogue, there's a mikvah available there. We have a library, and we have a gorgeous, and actually Hadassah magazine voted it as the most beautiful gardens of any, most beautiful synagogue with the most beautiful gardens in the diaspora. So we've been quite active of trying to keep up our standards with some dedicated people. I would be amiss if I didn't mention Charles Schlappak, who was born in Poland, came when he was a young boy, and he was the Rosh Kehillah for 10 years before I took over from him. And he really played a major, he was our treasurer forever. And he sadly passed away this December at age 87, a wonderful, wonderful person. And so much of the history of Kenyan Jews has his name in it, if you read anything about Kenya.
Foarte frumos. It's wonderful. I don't know what to translate firstly. It's so beautiful. Deci, deși este greu, șabatul are loc. Încearcă să păstreze viața evreiască, chiar dacă în unele aspecte este dificil. Oamenii vin la activitățile pe care le organizează. Există, n-am tradus să spunem, în pachet de traducere dinainte, faptul că au construit pe locul în care s-a construit prima sinagogă în 1907, au construit o a doua sinagogă foarte frumoasă. Se pare acolo sunt niște grădini deosebit de frumoase, se pare că este cea mai frumoasă din diaspora, așa ne spune domnul doctor. Au o bibliotecă foarte bună, au o mikvah, baie tradițională și lucrurile se întâmplă să continue prin voința unor persoane individual, fiecare se luptă să facă acest lucru. Înaintea domniei sale a fost președinte al comunității, un domn foarte dedicat, care a murit la vârsta de 87 de ani în decembrie 2020 și care venea de fel din Polonia. Yes, I'm wondering if you, with all your languages, can you understand a little bit about my translation?
I am embarrassed. I only know what you're saying because it's what I just said, and I can figure out little bits.
Ok. Am spus că un om care vorbește atât de multe limbi precis înțelege și ce traduc eu. Okay, I took a lot of your time, and I'm really, I would like, sorry, but I have to ask you about your visit in Romania, because
Yes.
Please.
Actually, I was just going to tell you. Right. Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to tell you about that. I just want to mention that I have a wife and 4 children who all born in Kenya. And you asked me in your minutes there that you told me, what do I do for getting away to unload? And in 1989, I bought a farm in the Rift Valley, and we have a beautiful farm where view of the lake, a lake called Lake Nyavasha. And in my morning jog, I see giraffes and zebras and hippos in the distance. I hear them. So this is the way I really unwind. This is my favorite place to come to.
Yes. I allow me to translate a little bit. Ne spune că are o soție și 4 copii. Sigur, eu am ezitat să întreb despre aceste aspecte. În 1989 a cumpărat un loc minunat. Este și fermier undeva lângă un lac foarte frumos și dimineața se poate saluta cu animalele sălbatice din zona. Și este modul în care se relaxează făcând acolo jogging și treburile curente. Ok.
Now, my trip to Romania was a very interesting trip. This was during Ceausescu time, and I won't offend anybody, I hope, by saying Romania was a very interesting country in that from a socio-economic point of view, it was way, way behind. Yet Ceausescu played this quasi-neutral East-West that it was a place that people would come to visit. So I was there probably in the 87, around there, 1987. And I came with President Moi and his delegation. And at that time, we landed and there were people waiting for us with flags of the Kenyan flag and the Romanian flag as Moi and Ceausescu got into the cars, and I was in the motorcade following them. And we went to one of the lodges that they put up foreign dignitaries. That's where we sat with President Moi, and we had a cup of tea. And we noted what the Kenyans were most impressed by. They said mzee, which means old man, in a nice way, in a honorable way, to talk to President Moi. They said what, and President Moi actually mentioned it. Did you notice that we didn't see any pregnant women and we didn't see any babies when we went there? And Kenya at the time was in the papers for having the highest birth rate in the world at 4.5%. And one of the members said, Mzee, these people don't reproduce very much. They have the lowest birth rate in the world. So one of the people in the delegation, who was he was the permanent secretary of foreign affairs, made a comment that is going to be in the book that I'm working on, and said, Mzee, we finally found a technology we can export because we were the highest and you people were the lowest. When we went out, then we got settled. I came to my hotel, which was a government hotel, and it was, I decided with one of the members of the group that we'll go out for a cup of coffee, only to find out in that particular time, I know it's not that way anymore, that it 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there was nowhere we could get a cup of coffee. We went to the big hotels, the gorgeous hotels from the outside, beautiful structures. No one could give coffee. So we had to go somewhere in the bush, far away in a government park where the coffee was undrinkable. But that's beside the point. Then when we came back, I found an invitation to come to the state banquet. So I quickly said, oh my God, they said it's going to start in a half hour. The motorcade would be waiting for us in a half hour. So I jumped into the shower, turned on the shower. I'm in this government hostel, and the shower head came, hit me in the head. It was a plastic and fell apart in pieces. And then when I went out to see the lady who was in a white coat, who was watching on each floor, and I explained to her, and I was wrapped in a towel so she could figure it out. Her reaction was, oh. She reaches and comes with another shower head made of plastic, put some glue and put it up there like it happens every time. At any rate, we came down to our motorcade, and we waited for hours before they actually moved. And it was it's a gorgeous, I can't remember the name. I have it in my book because I looked it up. It's a gorgeous palace there, beautifully done. And of course, all the pomp and everything that has to do with diplomacy was followed to the T, and we all sat and listened to the two people speak, had a very interesting meal, and then went back. The next day, they took us around I'll stop there if you want to expand, or I could go on.
I very much appreciate, and I'm sure all the people understanding will appreciate, and I try not to interview. In a few words, I will translate. Deci e vorba de vizita pe care a făcut-o cu președintele Keniei în 1987 în România, când i-a așteptat Ceaușescu. Speră că nu ofensează pe nimeni că povestește aceste lucruri. De altfel, ele vor fi publicate și în cartea la care lucrează. Au fost așteptați, au mers într-un hotel, povestește peripețiile, și delegația a constatat că pe stradă n-au văzut nicio femeie gravidă, nici copii, nici femei cu copii în brațe și au spus, domnule, aici este natalitatea probabil cea mai mică. Deci la ei în Kenya la momentul respectiv era foarte mare natalitatea și aici au constatat că n-au văzut femei gravide. De asemenea a vrut să bea cafea și a fost foarte greu să găsească un loc unde să poată să ia o cafea la ora 2-3 după amiază. Au fost pe urmă la banchet și pentru că se grăbea foarte tare să meargă la banchet, a vrut să facă repede un duș și a rămas cu dușul în mână și a venit cineva care i-a schimbat o femeie îmbrăcată frumos de femeia de servici, probabil de la respectivul hotel unde au fost cazați, cu un duș de plastic pe care i l-a dat. Oricum, amintirile sunt extrem de colorate. Thank you very much. I would like not to, I understand you write a book, and I'm very interested when you launch your book. Please be our guest here.
I'd be delighted.
I would very much appreciate this. Am invitat ca atunci când își lansează cartea să fie aici împreună cu noi la Radio Shalom sau și aici. The last questions, because I took a lot of your time and I apologize, but it was a wonderful interview. I would like to ask, when do you plan to come in Romania? Because we are looking forward for your lecture.
Well, first of all, when it's safe, and when I finish the book, which I will bring a copy for you personally, and I look forward to it. As soon as that could happen, I'm looking forward.
Thank you very, very much. Am întrebat când va veni în România, când va fi din nou siguranță cu acest COVID. We didn't talk about COVID because all the people are talking about, so this was, another way of thinking in the pandemic time.
Right.
So we are looking forward for you to come here in Romania to launch the book, and I thank you very much in advance for a copy. I would be delighted to read. Your life, it's like a history.
I couldn't have planned it.
Okay, many thanks for your kind, acceptance of this interview, and we are grateful, and we'll send you immediately after we'll be on in internet. Many thanks, and all the best.
Thank you very much. It was enjoyable talking to you. Bye bye.
Thank you very much.